Alright, so here I have the natural hemp, and we'll see how this one goes. It actually looks like a really long staple length, so that needs me a little bit optimistic, but I don't want to get too optimistic. I'm going to set this at on my second loop, which is kind of a medium speed, since apparently I spin fast. Hemp is actually used for a lot of clothes, so I figure since we've had so many fails, perhaps it would be nicer to try with something that I know is successfully turned into clothes quite regularly. So far, so good. I won't lie, when I'm looking at it and I'm feeling it, it actually makes me think of horsehair. So when I was a kid, we had some horses, and their mane and tail all look quite beautiful. It's actually a little bit coarse when you feel it for the most part, and it has a very unique look and texture. So when you cut their hair, you're going to get this look, or you pull their hair off of, the fence or whatever they've got it stuck on. You get this look, and so far this is spinning really well. It feels like. I'll probably put a little bit more twist in there, but I don't think I want to do too much. It's looking really good, surprisingly good, and I kind of like the width it's coming out at right now. We're not getting the issue of it being overspun right now, so let's just keep going. Try not to get too cocky and keep it spinning. The goal of spinning these fibers is to see kind of at a newbie level which one I could spin to weaving fibers that I could actually weave with. Say, if not my first batch, probably in a batch or two. So parts of my cotton fabric, even though I had a hard time spinning it, were definitely something I could potentially weave with. I would just need to get way better at it. So it would probably take me more than two attempts. Maybe with a less processed cotton, because I've read that that is easier. I might have been able to get it quicker. But with the cotton I had, it would probably take me, I'm going to say at least 4 attempts to get to that level where I could actually weave with it, outside of just weaving with the weft. Because obviously it doesn't need to be as strong to be the weft. Probably within a couple of attempts I could get some weft yarn, but not really warp yarn. As far as the corn fiber, I can't even imagine getting a warp yarn with the corn fiber. I can barely imagine getting a weft fiber because it just wanted to dissolve so much that I felt like even if I used, even if I made it into a weft, it would dissolve partway through the process. I don't know. That was just my impression. It probably wouldn't, but that's what it felt like. But so far, this is spinning really good. I think this is the longest I've had any progress without a break in the last 3 yarns. So I'm feeling very promising, but this is a very long staple length. It is surprisingly long. It is actually longer than even any wool I've worked with. I'm going to move this back a little bit further on my bobbin. And so far, I'm actually pretty happy with how it's coming out. It's good width. I feel like after I fly it, it will probably be about the same width as my 8/4 cotton. Obviously, it won't be an 8/4, but it'll be a 2-ply. I don't really know what that number would be considered. So a 2-ply, the same width as an 8/4, and like my 2/8 or my 8/2 is definitely thinner than my 8/4. So maybe it'd be like a toothpicker? I don't know. How does that work? If you can explain that to me in the comments. If you guys know how that works. Because I know like 8 is supposed to be the size of the single thread, right? And then if it's 8, 4, that makes it 4 strands of 8 diameter. So if it comes out the same size as an 8, maybe it's 4 diameter. 2 threads would be 2 4. So you can see kind of this side is a lot smoother than right here. This is where I started licking my fingers and it just started to come out much nicer. So I think with the next side, next half, I'm going to have a cup of water the entire time. It's also kind of coarse on your fingers, so I think I'm going to need to take a little bit of break. So I got one half. I'll do the other half a little bit later after I give my fingers a break, and then I'll let both bobbins rest for a day and then ply them together. But so far, I feel pretty good that we might actually have a sample of yarn that will be good for weaving. So try not to get my hopes too high up, but this spun beautifully. I think I had 2 to 3 breaks, and those were my fault entirely. Like I saw it and I was like, that's way too thin, and I just didn't add more fiber in. So that's on me. But after that, this so far is spinning wonderfully. It is a little coarse, so as I said, I'm gonna let my fingers rest a little bit. You know, the women who spun yards and yards of this by hand, they had fingers of steel, and I do not. I have fingers of flesh. So we're gonna take a little break, and we'll check back when I have the second one done. So I finished 2. This is the single ply, and this is the double ply. I ended up spinning the entire 2 ounces of fabric. It spun very easily. Those breaks I had in the beginning were the only breaks I had the entire time. So all in all, I'm really happy with it. I will say it is very coarse when spinning. I had what looked like paper cuts all over my fingers, even when using the water. So I wouldn't recommend starting with it because it is very coarse. I think G wool or something like that was the roughest thing I've spun with before, and that was, I thought, rough on my fingers. But whew, the people who spun this by hand originally, fingers of steel. I'm just tough. So this so far, when I do the snap test and the drip test, it passes it beautifully. So I am going to weave up a little sample with it. I just need to decide what set I need to use. I think I will use the plied as my warp, just because I don't think I have a heddle thin enough for how much my single ply is, or how thin my single ply is. On top of that, I only have about 50 yards of that. I don't have much more of the double ply. I only have about 70. So considering that, it'll be a very, very small sample. It won't be anything fancy, but we'll get to see what it looks like woven and finished. So let's see if I have a heddle the right size for this. It's about 15 ends per inch. I could set that in, you know what, if I set that in my 10 dent heddle and then I weave across with this, that will work out. Or even with my 12 dent heddle and weave across with this, because this is a single ply and I'm definitely going to get at least 20 or 30 ends per inch for this one. Yeah, I think we should definitely give that a shot and see how it looks. And then I'll share it and see if it's a little less coarse. The single ply still feels a lot coarser than the double, so even just plying it made it feel a little bit smoother. Let's see if weaving it takes away some of that coarseness. Right now, I would say I wouldn't want it against my skin, but we'll see. Alright, so I have done a couple little samples of the hemp, and the thing is, I ended up just using the ones I had plied and not the single layer, although the single ply did pass the snap test and the drift test. I could have used it for weaving, but it was just so much rougher, and my hands were already a little bit raw from spinning fiber, and I just didn't feel like putting them through that again. So I used the double ply and I made this. It actually looks really neat. The texture is great. When you rub it, it's still stiff, but after throwing it in the dryer, it's definitely a lot smoother. I still wouldn't want to wear it as against my skin as a shirt, but on an outer layer of a jacket, I could definitely see this, and it has really good definition. You can see where I had some subs, even where with some fibers, if you have small subs, they're not as noticeable. With this one, you can definitely see all of those little things, but it looks great. It's not as elastic as, say, a wool or a cotton. It is much firmer. Honestly, when I was weaving it, I was afraid the only thing it would be good for is like a doormat, because it was just so rough. And I did crochet a little swatch so that you can see like how easy it is to make definition with these. Like the stitch definition is absolutely beautiful. You can see each stitch I did. They all stand out clearly. They don't blend together. There's a little bit more elasticity, definitely less than you would get with a cotton. And it's still a little coarse, like I wouldn't use it for a lot of things. But you know what? Actually, if you try to use it as kind of a loofah type feel, I could definitely see that scratching off a layer of skin. I think it'd be good for that, or even just kind of using on your stove to get off some stuck on stuff. So I think if it's anything that needs a little bit more abrasion, like this would be good. Again, I would not want it against my skin, so I probably wouldn't make anything crocheted with it, personally, unless you're doing an outer layer, again, of a jacket or something like that, because it does have beautiful, beautiful definition, and it feels very sturdy. But I'm just pretty happy that we actually had a spin that passed the weave test, and it came out so beautifully. For my first time spinning hemp, I'm pretty happy with it. It ended up being one of the easier fibers to spin. So we have 1 success and 2 failures. Let's see how this project continues.